Hey y'all, what's good? It's your girl, the Benja B. What you watching on TV? All right, so I got a serious one for y'all today. I was up the other night. Oh, first, let me say Happy New Year. Let me slide that in there. Happy New Year. But I was up the other night and I was just kind of, clicking through all the different streaming services that I have, right? Looking for something to watch. And so I ended up on HBO Max and I came across a movie called The Alabama Solution. Now, to be fair, I had seen this, I don't know, they dropped it probably like in October or something. It's been on there for a while. And I would just kind of slip past it. I wasn't really thinking about it. But, I was like, fuck it, I'll turn it on. So I turned on this movie and it is basically a documentary that reveals systematic abuses in the Alabama State Prison. Very interesting watch. I will say that. As the movie starts, basically we go into a prison with I believe a news crew. And I forget what they were documenting first, but this documentary ended up going in a whole different direction. So as they go in, I guess they just kind of looking around or whatever, and they're, monitored by the guards. But as they get ready to shut it down, a lot of the prisoners was actually pulling them to the side and was like, yo, you know what I'm saying? Like, shit is fucked up in here. I need you to notify this person or that person, or, y'all need to get the real story and this and that. And so they actually lead this team to a couple of dudes that are, I guess, however the prison hierarchy works, like these are some of the well-known inmates that have been there for a minute, and they carry a little weight, you know what I'm saying? And so these dudes got cell phones and they tend to document, things that are going on within the prison system. So, they probably use it like for like Facebook and shit or whatever, but they doing real work with their shit. They actually documenting what's going on behind the scenes that don't nobody know about. And so they end up connecting with this team and they have calls and they just kind of talk about the condition of the prisons, and we ain't talking about like just bad food. We talking about like motherfuckers getting beat to death. We talking about people like overdosing and dying. Apparently that happens a lot in the prison systems. And so I think like when you haven't been to prison, you tend to think of like the biggest threat to prisoners would be the other prisoners, you know what I'm saying? Because we all see eyes and just the shit that be on TV, and they fight amongst themselves. So that's a level of danger that they live with on a daily basis. But it looked like in a lot of cases their biggest threat come from actual guards that are in this system that work in here with these prisoners and shit, you know what I'm saying? So these dudes are documenting what's going on and they really just trying to get the word out. They want people outside the prison systems to know exactly how it is that they living in there, you know what I'm saying? One instance that actually happens kind of while this is going on is an inmate named Stephen Davis. He ended up getting killed in there. And so we find out that this was a result of a beating that he sustained by the prison guards. And the prison system has a particular rule. They got some kind of shit on the books that say if a prisoner is, physically threatening to the guards, then they got to go ahead to off his ass, you know what I'm saying? And so that was the story. Obviously, that's the story that the prison system is given to people. They say he was threatening, and so they had to beat him, and they didn't mean to kill him, but he died, oh well, you know what I'm saying? What we find out as other groups and stuff tend to get involved, like there was a group that was trying to get involved. What the name of was that group? Hold on, let me see. I forgot the group. Fuck it. But there was a group that was getting involved, and so they actually had an attorney that would call, and he was just trying to kind of get to the bottom of what went on. And a lot of the prisoners, they stayed quiet. They was like, shit, I don't know nothing about that. You know what I mean? Like, I think he wasn't doing nothing wrong, but shit, what do I know? You know what I mean? They even reached his cellmate. His cellmate was very hush hush about it, and he was starting to like cite codes and shit, and you could basically tell that somebody got in his ear and was like, don't say nothing, you know what I'm saying? And he even said during the call, he was like, I get out of here in 2 months and I'm not trying to fuck that up for myself, so I can't talk to y'all about it. I don't know nothing. I'll be happy to talk to his mama when I get out. I'll be truthful with his mom, but I ain't getting involved with the court shit, you know what I'm saying? And so he didn't, you know what I mean? As that's going on and they're getting to the bottom of it, Stephen Davis's mother, she's really trying to find out what's going on, and the system is being pretty evasive with her, and she had a hard time getting to the truth of the matter, but finally she did, and everybody kind of speculated they knew what it was. Basically some of the guys that did talk about it, they basically said that there was some kind of situation going on where Stephen Davis was accused of being gay, and so he actually had a homemade blade that he was using probably just to protect himself, and I think the assumption is that he was trying to protect himself from other inmates, but for whatever reason I guess the guards saw him with it and wanted him to drop it or put it down. The inmates who were witnesses actually said that he dropped it, and he was like 15 feet away from it, but they beat his ass anyway. And so he ended up succumbing to his injuries. Very, very sad situation. That's just one situation. Now, the other inmates, there were two significant inmates. I know one of them's name was Robert Earl, and he was pretty instrumental later on down the line once we get a little bit further into it, because this dude, he rallied the troops, you know what I'm saying? And they ended up leading some sort of prison strike. But before that, we're talking to two other inmates. I forgot their names, but they actually had footage of what was going on in their prison. You know what I'm saying? They had like, they would show you like the room where the bunk beds were, and it was super crowded, and you got dudes like curled up in the corner on the floor, and you know, like it's super dirty in there, and they talk about the food, like the quality of the food is fucked up, and it's so many people in there, and like a lot of them dudes is, you know, they struggling, you know what I'm saying? So then they end up stepping into addiction, they start getting fucked up, they getting high, dudes ODing, like they finding dead people every day because they take too much of that shit now and get back up. Like it seems like hell. This seemed like hell on earth. Like to live in them type of conditions, it got to fuck your mind up. You know what I'm saying? If you ain't already fucked up before you go in there, it's a miracle probably to go through that and then come back out and like still have some semblance of normalcy. You know what I mean? Like it seems highly unlikely. But yeah, they really do a good job with documenting some of that shit that was going on, so you get a true picture of what's happening. I don't think them dudes was exaggerating. I think that everything that they were saying was true, on top of the fact they had footage of it. You know what I'm saying? So it'd be really hard to dispute the footage that you see of these dudes curled up and, you know, struggling, and you got these older inmates in there and shit. Like that shit just really is fucked up. It's bad. So you got the system itself failing these people on a humanitarian level, on top of probably all of the prison politics that's in there with the dudes and, you know, power plays and shit. Like I couldn't imagine, you know what I'm saying? So that's one element of it. The other thing that they discuss quite a bit, which I think some of us are familiar with, if you've heard of the school to prison pipeline, that was real popular 2016, 17. Like people really started putting a major emphasis on how it's more of us in that system than it is of anybody else. And that don't feel like no accident. I believe that shit is real. I think that when you send your children to public school, you lining them up. You know what I'm saying? Like I really honestly believe that shit. And so the relevance of me even mentioning that is the school to prison pipeline is basically ushering people into legal slavery. You know what I'm saying? These cats get in there and, you know, they gotta work. They gotta work and they're not getting paid. What you get paid like $2 a month or some shit. Like that's not, you're not getting compensated for your work in there. You know what I mean? So they do talk about that. You know, the jobs and shit that people have to do and they're not getting no pay. On top of being threatened by the guards, and you probably gotta fight off these niggas in the nighttime and shit. You know, like it's a lot of shit going on. It seems like if you're there, you have valid concerns for being uncomfortable, and you know, it's pretty fucking grimy. It's pretty grimy. I mentioned Robert Earl a couple of minutes ago. The relevance there is they ended up leading a strike some kind of way. I'm really impressed with these dudes. These cats, some of these dudes that be in there, they have so much potential, and you be like, damn, like that shit just went the wrong direction. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I will say that I was really super impressed with his ability to kind of rally the troops. You know what I'm saying? There are 14 state prisons in Alabama. He was able to organize them to where they all went on strike, and they basically shut down and stopped doing any of the in-prison work, right? So no laundry, any work they were supposed to do, the niggas, they got together and they stopped doing that shit. So they went on strike. This was met with resistance by the system, of course, because then the food started getting more fucked up, and you know, the prison system didn't give a fuck. They're just like, shit, you niggas can hold out however long you need to, but you're not gonna win this shit. And it was really fucked up and sad because they didn't. Like, I think they were supposed to do it for 30 days or something, and probably about, you know, 2 weeks in, like the niggas started getting antsy, and a lot of them is probably in there for extended amounts of time, and they just ready to get back to normal, and they hungry, they want to eat again. Now they walking around, they pissed off and starving, you know. So it didn't really last as long as they could have, or as long as what they tried to. But the effort is not lost on me. I think it's super dope to have them type of skills and to be able to organize that shit, even from, you know, he was able to reach the other prisons and get them to get on board with it. You know what I'm saying? But ultimately it didn't work. State governor was like, shit, they being unreasonable and we don't give a damn, and that just is what it is. And so that didn't really go nowhere. I think the gist of this whole documentary really was for us to be able to see like what it really looks like to be in that environment. And then there are some hopes for a humanitarian effort where, you know, they want people to rally for conditions to be a little bit better. These dudes are in there, they're in poor health conditions. One dude was like catching rats in like a water bottle or some shit. Like that's fucked up. He had like mice or something swimming in his toilet, and it's like, god damn, you know. So I don't think they're exaggerating. I think that everything that they're complaining about, and I think all the shit that they say is probably true. It is probably very dangerous in there for more reasons than just one. And so the human in me understands understands that that's probably got to be very fucking tough. And I feel really bad that they have to live in them conditions, right? I really do. But that's the gist of the documentary itself. My thoughts. So as I'm watching this, you know what I'm saying? Like, I really, my heart do go out to them. I feel bad that people have to exist in this way. I feel bad for them existing in this way the same way I feel bad for the homeless people that live on the corners, you know what I'm saying, that sleep outside in rain puddles with no drawers on. You know what I mean? Like, you see shit like that and you just be like, damn, that's fucked up. You know what I mean? And if you have any piece of humanity in your heart, like, it's hard to see people suffer and not be affected by it. Like, I think that takes a very special type of individual that can pull that shit off, or a psychopath. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta be, pretty far removed to not be affected by that in any way. But here's the other thought that I was having, right? As I'm watching all of the atrocities and they're talking about the no pay for all the jobs that they do and all that kind of shit, I couldn't help but think to myself but you in prison, right? Like, I don't think they send you to prison to be comfortable, right? There's probably something that you were connected to that deemed pretty extreme punishment, right? So you did something where it was deemed fair for you to have 15 years extracted from your life, right? And so the assumption would be that whatever environment you're sitting in is probably not going to be that comfortable. Right? What would be the incentive of not going to prison if you could just do some fucked up shit and go somewhere and be comfortable for 15 years? I don't really understand that. And so I know that sounds bad. I know that sounds bad. And I have to also say, like, it's not to downplay like what these people is going through. I know if it was a brother or a kid of mine or a cousin or a family member, like, I think it's fucked up. I'm not saying that I think that it's okay or that it's all right. But what I am saying is I don't understand why these motherfuckers feel like you supposed to go to prison and be treated like a human. You know what I mean? Because we're not gonna pretend like most of these dudes didn't do some extreme shit to be sitting there. Then we could get to where we say, okay, well, we're gonna carve out the crime. So if you do this kind of crime and it's just because you was selling something or smoking something, then you don't deserve to be exposed to it, and then we'll just expose all the child molesters and the rapists and the murderers to it. But I mean, ain't nobody really got no time for that type of shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, all you motherfuckers is lumped into a bunch, and it's just kind of like everybody get the same experience. You know what I mean? Also, I won't be delusional and pretend that it's not some people in there that be accused of shit that they didn't do. We see that happen all the time. You see it on the news more and more where somebody been sitting in that motherfucker for 20 years and wasn't supposed to be in there in the first place. So in that instance, it's fucked up for this person to have that experience. It's fucked up. There's no way to pretend it's not fucked up. But I just don't get how you would do a crime that is so drastic that you have to go sit down for 20 years and then complain because it's uncomfortable. I think that's pretty fucking ballsy. And so I just don't know that they'll ever get the reform that they're hoping for. I don't know that they really deserve it. And I don't make no decisions for that shit. You know what I'm saying? So what I think really in the grand scheme of things don't really matter. It don't mean nothing. But I just think that's bizarre. I think that's really weird. It's like when you're in a relationship and somebody cheating and they cheat on you and then you find out and then you be mad at them, and then a month pass and you still mad at them, and then another month pass and you softened up a little bit but you still a little mad at them, and then they hit you with the, oh, you can't live in the past type shit. Like, bitch, you don't get to tell me, you know what I mean? Like, it's that type of thing. I think for me, when I'm watching them and I'm watching these complaints, I'm not saying that the prison guards should be beating these dudes to death. The human in me wouldn't even allow me to do a job like that, right? So that's a whole nother argument though, because now we're talking about God and spirituality, and we're talking about how the universe is reciprocal, and like, that's a whole nother conversation, right? Wrong is wrong, right is right, and then there are times when it's not quite as black and white as that. You know what I'm saying? It depends on the circumstance and the situation, what's going on around it. If you are vindicated in doing something, oftentimes the universe will reward you for it, even if what we see in front of us is bad or evil. You know what I mean? Like, that shit gets really complicated. So I'm not gonna touch that in this. That's a whole nother conversation. But we cannot pretend like some of them dudes ain't in there for touching on little kids and shit. Like, so you a dude that touch on little children, I don't give a fuck if you OD. If you take too many drugs and you just don't ever wake up, like, that's not really something that I feel real bad about. You know what I mean? If you are the dude that goes in there because you had a breakup and your wife wanted to move on with her life and you decided that she needed to die for it, I don't really give a fuck if you're starving or eating old bologna sandwiches. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't give a fuck about that shit. You know what I mean? If you are the type of person that is in an environment where you are, maybe the business that you're in warrants you having to, you know, use firepower in some kind of way, like a 3-year-old get hit while you in the middle of conducting your business and you gotta sit your ass in there. I don't feel bad for you sitting in there. You know what I'm saying? I feel like this should be an incentive for people, young people especially, to do what you have to do to avoid that shit. If you don't want to eat old bologna sandwiches, don't go to the state prison. If you don't want to wake up next to the dude that you was just having a conversation with, but now that motherfucker is blue and his pus coming out his mouth because he dead, because he took too much whatever that shit was that old boy made in the bunk behind the bathroom, like, don't go to the prison system. You know what I'm saying? If you don't want to work for 12 hours a day raking leaves and scooping boo-boo for the horses that run through the fucking tracks at the fair, just don't go to the prison system. Like, do what you gotta do to avoid that shit. I know for a fact that this system is rigged against a certain group of people. You know what I'm saying? I believe that wholeheartedly. I see it every fucking day. And I want these people that are delusional and think that, well, everybody's got the same access. And no, it's not. It's not real. Like, that is bullshit. But because we know that's true, that means you got an obligation to navigate your life in a way that don't put you in the line of that fire. This movie is an incentive to keep your motherfucking ass up out of there. I don't know that the reform is gonna happen. I don't know that, you know, reform is really even plausible or necessary, or I don't know. I don't have a dog in that fight. You know what I'm saying? But I also don't have a lot of empathy for it, because, like, what did you do to get there? And you think just because 20 years passed that it's been enough time and you don't deserve this anymore? Well, you tell it to the young man who you murdered. You tell it to his mama. You tell it to his little sister. Tell it to his kids. You tell it to them. Tell them that you think 20 years is long enough for you to pay the price for taking their daddy from them. You tell it to the little kid who you brutally assaulted them, and now they'll never be able to shit the same until the day they die. So you tell them that 20 years is long enough. So, you know, we gotta be careful on how we conduct ourselves, kids, and just stay out of the line of certain shit, because it's not a game, and I don't think those dudes are lying. They've got footage that is very clear that the shit that they're living in is fucked, and it's not cool. It's not okay. I don't think that it's all right to be beating people to death just because you're in the mood to. Like, I don't think that shit is okay. But I also think that you have a responsibility to keep yourself out them environments. If that's not your get down, stay the fuck away from around there. So that's all I got to say about that shit. It's your girl, I'm the Benji B. I'm finna go find me something else to watch on TV. Bye.